No mai haere mai, ki tēnei hui. Welcome. So this will be, there are two parts to this session. The first will be public and live streamed, and we'll get a presentation, and there'll be an opportunity for to ask questions of the team about the CapEx and OpEx asks for this LTP, annual plan, and then we will break, and then we'll have a session where we can seek further advice from our team, and that will be not public and live streamed. So over to you, Chris.
Thank you. You've literally just read my introduction, so that's very helpful. I'll introduce the team first, actually, to begin with. So we've got Pete Wells here, who's the former head of service planning. So he's recently moved into a new role, but he's quite well understands the service planning, so he's come along to help us out. And we have sitting in the back there Charles Barker, which is the Chief Operating Officer, and Sean DeRoy, which is the Regional Planning and Engineering Lead. So we thought it's quite helpful to have some people that can talk in depth at some of the projects. Before I get into it, I just want to note that we've been working to an extremely compressed time frame, and coupled with this is we have Wellington Water who have discovered more information about the condition of the assets throughout the advice period. So we've had to work at pace really to pull this information together. So what we will present today is the best available information that we have, and we do thank Wellington Water for their flexibility in this process. The way that we'll approach this, if it's okay with everybody, is I'll provide some context, then I'll talk through the CapEx and OpEx requests, and once we finish CapEx, we'll open up for questions of myself or Wellington Water, and then we'll roll on to OpEx, and we'll end with some options and some recommendations. I can either see there or there. I can't see both. Okay, I've just spoken to the first slide. For context, so this is a process that we obviously run each year. We run it every 3 years for the LTP, and this year it's been, as I noted, it's been fairly compressed. So Wellington Water. So what I'll run through is the different types of budgets that we operate with and the advice that we've received so far. Wellington Water, throughout this program, were funded $190 million, which is around $1.17 billion for the capital program. They provided us with some stage one advice in December, which requested an increase of just under $14 million for CapEx and $8.5 million for OpEx. Making up that request for the advice, where there was $9.8 million, which is our regional contribution towards the IT system. And we had $3 million for drinking water renewals, $1.2 million for drinking water OpEx, maintenance, $3.6 for stormwater, and $3.54 for wastewater OpEx. Now, once that advice came out, Wellington Water also considered, had a look at some of the condition of the assets that they're operating, and they provided us with a new set of advice, which is the stage 2 advice, is what we'll focus on today. Just want to make a note that of the original IT system, so that request was originally put to us, and now that funding request has been removed from the stage 2 advice. It's gone to GWRC to consider the full funding of the regional cost, which is around $37 million, and the intent is then to recover it from the TAs via the bulk water levy, and we're focusing on the interest-only payment for that. So before you today, we're going to provide a few options. One is to remain within the LTP Tranium budget and reprioritise the work across the LTP, so the 3 years, which is $75 million. Another option is to fully fund the Wellington Water request at a cost of $85 million, which is a $25 million uplift. And then we have some options to partially fund Wellington Water, which could be to the point of saying that there is no increase or there is an increase of this level. So you have options there to play with. Here's the budget in case you haven't had the joy of looking at it for some time. I won't go into details here, but basically we've got a pretty flat line around the $60 million mark across the triennium. Yep. Want to take a picture? Yep. Okay.
Will these slides be sent to us? Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris.
Yep. So the first option is to revise the prioritised program within the LTP triennium envelope. So what this means is, it means that it's a little bit lumpy, to be honest. So you see that 2526 rockets up to $75 million, and then 2627 comes back down to 53. But I must make a note on that, is that 53 is probably going to be quite challenging in the current environment. So they've done a lot of work on 2425, and then I think 2627 probably requires a bit more thinking as well. So I wouldn't lock those numbers into your head right this moment. But if you, sorry, oh sorry, I had it paused there for Sarah. Sorry about that. Yeah, you need to just shout out, and I'll just change it. That'd be good. So the projects in this case, if we were to take this approach of prioritising within the triennium, is we would push out some Moa Point projects. Now, it's an important point. With Moa Point, there's an enormous amount of funding that has been put forward to Moa Point. I think it's about $130 million roughly over the 10-year LTP. So when you see a Moa Point, there's a number of different activities in there. So what they're essentially proposing here is to move out some of the, you use the words loosely, less critical activities, and what they've done is they've prioritised some more critical Moa Point activities into the baseline budget. So it can be a little bit complicated, but that's essentially what's happened. So in this case, they're saying, well, let's shift out $5 million for the aeration system, $4 million for the odour and ventilation, and we'll just keep patching that roof for a while, and that's $14.2 million. So that's what it would look like if we live within the triennium budget. And then alongside that, the CBD wastewater program, which is the Victoria Street, would also be shifted out into year 4. And then some of the renewals across the city, which the renewals are put there because we've had a lot of breaks, obviously, and the cost to maintain the breaks is increasing. So Agri Crescent, the pressure management and the PRV renewals will be pushed to year 4 along with the wastewater renewals. So it's not pretty, but this is the reality that we're dealing with at the moment. I'll move on to option 2, and then I'll go to the option where you've got some more choices in there. The option 2 is the fully. You didn't do your job, remember? That was your job.
Just on the clicker, Chris.
That would be better, actually. Yep. So option 2 is the fully recommended program, which, as I said, this moves us up to $85 million. And I won't go through the projects in this slide because we're going to cover them in the next slide. But this is Wellington Water's recommended budget and program. All right. Yep.
So what's on the screen reflects what Pat was talking about last week.
Yep.
That's the program that Pat was discussing.
Yep. So if we just move to the next slide, please. So this is the funding option 3, which is essentially the variable program. So we do have some projects in the larger works program that aren't uncommitted projects, so that we haven't actually signed a contract. That's not to say that they're not the right projects to do, but these, if you did want to make some decisions in terms of which ones you'd fund and which ones you wouldn't fund, we have a list of projects here, ranked from high priority to lower priority. So, I mean, starting on some key ones, you've obviously got the airport waste interceptor, you've got the pumping stations. We've got some very critical projects here, which are needed to ensure the resilience of the network, and also to reduce some of the operating costs that we incur. So at the moment, some of these major pipe valleys, such as the one in Johnsonville and the one at Ara Valley, the cost to repair these are getting to a point where it's it's pretty scary. So you take Newlands, every time one of those bursts, it's $85,000 in OPEX. So in one way, you look into, what's the best way to reduce this? So you are looking to renew it, because otherwise, Wellington Water, they essentially require more reactive OPEX maintenance. So it's kind of an investment for the future. However, and there are always trade-offs. So these are the trade-offs that we've kind of worked through. So you've got two package options there, really. There's option 1, which is everything below the line, and there's option 2, which is everything above the line. And then you get, there are some ones in there which are quite important to iwi. For example, the Atara-Wilton Bay project, wastewater project, was one that was put on by Mana Whenua, and funding was put aside. So from a network point of view, you could argue that's actually not the most important project to do. But in terms of the cultural significance of that project and why it's on them in the first place, it makes a lot of value. So this is where we've ended up with. I might just pause here, because there's a lot of projects on here that you may want to have a discussion over, or to understand the rationale. I'm pausing, and then we can go to the options.
I've got a question. I put my own hand up, which was weird. Didn't see my hand, and yeah. What sits behind? I'm interested in what data sits behind this prioritisation. Is it related to kind of failures, or what information is informing the order of this list?
So fundamentally, what's happened is as we've got more knowledge about the investments needed at the wastewater treatment plants, in particular those directly compliance-related issues around the automation and control systems, the UV systems, and the aeration systems, they're all critical to compliant discharges. Those costs have come up, and we brought forward some of those programs. So there's more cost than within the LTP, and so we're considering those are things that we just have to get done. The list of items here are larger projects that have not been committed. So that's the first thing is what are the committed contracts we have that we have to do? So they're in. Then there is annual recurring expenses. So some of the reactive capex we get and some of the planning capex that's needed. You just need to have that in. That leaves these things behind, which are optionality, where we could remove them. We have kind of ranked them in this in terms of where we consider them to be critical. So something like the airport interceptor, we know that there's a risk of failure, and this investment is critical to being able to respond to a failure. It doesn't fix the pipe, but it does allow us that if there was a failure, we could actually mitigate some of the impacts by diverting flows. So we consider that, it's a critical piece of insurance that you'd put in. The pump stations are all part of that integrated wastewater CBD upgrade that provides for growth and deals with some of the legacy. So there's renewals in there as well as capacity upgrades, and they're all, you don't get the benefits of the program unless you deliver all of the elements in it. And so we say that goes in.
I'll put you on the list, Sarah.
So Murphy Street, just so you're aware, that's outside New World, and there's an undersized overflow there that sometimes surcharges in heavy rain and results in wastewater down the street. The last one, there was a couple in 2021 and one in 2022. There's another issue with the size of that overflow that sometimes discharges into the stormwater network. But this would deal with this big surcharging onto the street. Then you've got, as Chris was saying, you've got the Johnsonville water main package, which is dealing with a risk around Broderick Road, where there's an old AC pipe, which is coming to the end of its life and prone to bursts. And when it bursts, it's a significant cost to repair. So, and a lot of that is carriageway reinstatement cost. It's not, but the pipe isn't going to get any better, but it's a question of when you intervene to renew it. Similarly, the Newlands one, that's referring to Link Road, which again, it's an AC pipe. When it fails, it's a large burst and a large cost to repair. Chris has talked to Atari-Wilton's Bush, and Arrow Street is referring to the rider main on the street, which has had a number of failures in the last few years. The cost to repair those is not significant in each event, but there's just a frequency of them. The next thing up the list is the network reactive renewals. So what we're saying, that's the money that when we're going out and fixing stuff, sometimes you have to replace an asset when you're doing the fix. And the experience is that we're using that CapEx at a higher rate than we're funded. So we're kind of saying that we're going to end up asking for it anyway at some point, and we believe we need that much to meet it. In the base number, we've included some extra money for water to go with the leaks, but not for wastewater and stormwater. So most of that extra 4 million is for waste and stormwater. District area meter renewals, these are the, because we don't have metering at the consumer level, these are our area meters. There's a number of them which are not reading correctly. I think Sean was saying there's 13 that have failed at this time, so it's very hard to estimate exactly what our water consumption is if we don't know what's going on. So this wouldn't replace them all, but it gives us an ability to start replacing some of these that are failing. Victoria Street Rising Main, that's a wastewater pipe that's part of the CBD wastewater upgrade package. That one has had a number of failures over the years and big bursts. It's on there because it's not yet, that contract is not yet signed, and it's effectively deferring it to start from a year. But that includes element of Wakefield Street as well and around that area. And then the last one is the Highland Park Reservoir, which is a very old buried reservoir, and that's starting some work on replacing it and upgrading it.
Councillor Free, you had a question? Sorry. Yeah, I'll get that.
No. I've worked it out. Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you. 2 questions from me. Did Johnsonville or Newlands work? When we did the 23-24 annual plan, someone in council was kind enough to design up some flyers that we could give out for all our wards as things that were included in that annual plan, and those main renewals were in that flyer. Now they're looking like they're sitting as an optional to what was in the work program. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of when did they move from something that we basically put on a flyer that we could give to our community into a optional if we put more money in status.
So they're at the moment they're in the plan. So it's back to that. To fit a budget, if we bring in the critical work for Moa Point, these are the things that are not yet committed. Okay. It's not that they're optional. They're planned to execute. We're getting ready to execute those, but it is dependent on the funding decisions.
Okay, no, that makes a few. I was just
essentially
worried.
It's just been prioritised out.
Okay, no, that's perfect. And the second one, when I was reading the Wellington water paper, they sent you guys, they talked about animal death contamination in the reservoirs being quite a live risk in terms of poisoning water. Just wondered, since the cameras are off, your sort of commentary on is that to the level of urgency or criticality that they seem to imply?
Well, from memory, we've had one instance over the past. You'd know this answer, wouldn't you, Charles? How many?
We've had, across the entire network, we've had 2 recent contamination events where we've discovered animal carcasses or skeletons in the reservoirs. We've got and what we're suggesting there is that for relatively low level of money, if we could bring that forward, we can address most of that contamination risk within Wellington City Council's reservoirs. So it's a live risk. We had a boil notice just recently, and that spurred us to go have another refreshed look about how we're addressing that risk.
Is that reflected in any of these projects here, or they're them?
It's been treated as part of the core program. So
core program. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Foon.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Just wanted to clarify, last week Pat talked about Harris Street. So is that part of the Wakefield Victoria Street Rising Main? That there were wastewater leakages?
Do you mean the siphon? If so, that's an OPEX question, and we'll come to that shortly.
Okay, sweet. Next question is just with the airport interceptor. So you've got 3.8, just to kind of patch that up. What does the CUM stand for, and what would it cost to actually fix that properly? Cumulative. Okay, yeah, thank you.
I can't recall the exact number. I think from memory, this is going back to a year and a half ago when we were talking LTP, it was around about 85 million. But it's a very complex area to repair because it crosses into some of the airport operating space where this goes.
Ouchie. Okay, and thank you. Third question was just around just wanted to clarify on one of the first slides, wastewater renewals in Newtown. Was that in option 1 with a minimum investment? I just wanted to clarify where that's at on that first slide.
Effectively, that's been deferred out of the triennium into a year 4 position.
Yep.
So it's not up on here on the list.
Yeah. So even although we've got a lot of density going on.
Yes, and the part of the network that is the most aged and in most in need of renewals is probably wastewater.
Yeah.
That has the largest backlog.
Thank you.
Councillor Chung.
Thanks very much. When you're comparing these different priorities, is it better to prioritise wastewater first, because wastewater presents an imminent danger to people, rather than freshwater? Freshwater, sure, we don't like those leaks, but it's water, but it doesn't provide any danger apart from someone drowning in it, I guess.
I would just say that our experience is that only just out of the acute water shortage risk. And so
Sorry, we need the answers into a microphone, because otherwise the public won't get to hear.
So it's a little bit of apples and oranges, but I wouldn't underestimate how fragile the drinking water shortage supply is. It was only last year that we had a very real risk of running out and running short of water, and the ramifications to the community and business, if that even occurs for a part of a day, is substantial. So I understand the logic, but if you can't have hygiene without drinking fresh potable water. So from drinking water, from a water entity perspective, we would say that potable water is your first, and and that leads to your ability to have good hygiene. You can't flush your toilet if you don't have water.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Now, when I look at this priority list, it seems like, I mean, you've had some reason to actually put it in this order. So can we not just start from the bottom or start from the highest priority and then address those? Because isn't that the simplest way? Because we don't actually know, the difference between one priority and another. So it's very difficult for us to say that, I quite like this one because I live in Johnsonville or something. So isn't it better for you to actually say that these are the ones that are most in imminent danger of fracturing or failing?
Yep, and I think that's what's been provided. So the most imminent ones are already banked into the base program, and these are the additional ones that you could decide to fund, and they are currently ranked in a priority order. So Wellington Water have done that prioritisation. That's up with them as the trusted advisor to do that work, and they've done that, and this is what they've presented up to us. And now you have options to either fund or not fund. Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Actually, you might have answered my question, but the 53.36 is at the bottom. So what does that cover? All the stuff that we've already agreed to?
Yeah, effective. Well, it's the stuff that we would recommend. It's either it's already committed, or it's the extreme compliance risks at the wastewater treatment plants, or it's the general annual recurring spend. So effectively, we're saying from there is an opportunity. These things are not yet committed, and we could have some optionality to defer them.
Yep.
Councillor Randall. There was a flurry of hands. Councillor Free.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around this. So, and it's a bit after Councillor Brown's question. So the 53.36 cumulative covers off a list of projects that are committed. In other words, they're going to go ahead. Is that what you're saying? Because we're starting the baseline here with 53.36 million of work.
Yes, in practice, I mean, you could always go through and say, well, you take 10% off all the reactive work or something like that. So it's not, this doesn't represent exact contracts, but in practice, we're saying we wouldn't recommend that you try and go below that.
And
they're effectively committed.
There's a list of that work somewhere.
Yes, so that's in the advice memo. It has all of the program within it. Some of these things are in there as well, because the 75 million is where the year 2 program, the 25-26 program adds up to 75 million, which basically goes up to the red line. So those things are within the program that you've seen in our advice. But it is, what we're saying is they're not yet committed, and so there is ability to make choices still.
Can I just ask, what have we budgeted for? So, like, presumably we've already had some budget. What will our already agreed or tentatively agreed budget cover?
So the budget is, excuse me, $60.1 million is the actual budget in the LTP.
So that would take us up to the Murphy Street wastewater interceptor, roughly, would it?
Pretty much. I mean,
So, okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying that at the moment, anything above that is, or roughly at that point, is unfunded?
yes, because other priorities have since occurred, such as the Moa Point, which have come into this, which is obviously pushed these ones out. So that's
okay.
why Victoria Street was one that was in there for 2526, and then due to other priority, it's been bumped out. So it looks like it's been funded to Councillor McNulty's earlier point, but now because of other priorities, it's come back up above the line. Hence why they're asking for additional funds too.
And they're asking for additional funds of about 26. And where does that take the red line?
Well, it takes it. Well, it's about 25, and it takes it up to the very top, above Highland Park Reservoir.
So for what they would.
Sorry, Councillor. It's just we've used nearly all of the time. We haven't got on to OPEX yet. So I'll go to Councillor Calvert, her question, and then we will move on with the presentation. Sorry.
Look, my question is, where is the Golden Mile work in this program? Is it under what? Is it?
It's within the core program. So the Golden Mile is in there. Within the triennium period, I think, if I recall, it was 8.5 million or something like that.
Yeah, 8
and the
point
full
something.
10-year program we're still managing a 10-year program in there.
Yeah, that's right.
So, so where's the 8.5 million? Is that over this coming financial year, or is that over the triennium? Which triennium are we talking about? This one here?
It's over this triennium, yep. I don't have the exact cash flow in front of me right here, but I do know that it's around 8 point.
Yeah. So is that this current financial year and next financial year, or is it?
Yeah, correct.
So over 2 years.
Over 3. It's over 3 years.
Over 3 years.
Over the triennium.
Okay. And so where would I find it in here? Is it under sort of reactive or?
It's on here, so it's 2.6, 2.8, and 3.2. Page 17 of 20, third line from the bottom.
Oh, okay, thank you. And so where did the 24 million come in, 24 million that we had in papers
It comes in the next year.
in the next year?
Yeah,
Okay.
of the balance of the 20 of the money. Yep.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, let's go back to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. So this leaves you with a few options, really. You have the partial investment option, and essentially a package up to $15 million, which will be $75 million in total. For that, hang on one second. This is one of the challenges in pulling presentations together at the last minute. But anyway, so you have an option to partially invest, which will, as I said, that goes up to $75 million, $15 million increase. And for that, you get the airport interceptor, the pumping stations, the Johnsonville and Newland renewals, and the RVA Street riser main renewal. Or you could fund the full amount, which you get what I just mentioned, plus everything else on that list up to and above the red line, so up to the Highland Park Reservoir. And then you have options to provide a variable increase, essentially between nil and $25 million, and you have the list of projects out there. So there is also an option not to provide any uplift at all. Given the state of the network and the projects within the baseline and the ones that are the ones that are being prioritised in, and the additional ones, officer's recommendation would be to fund that. Move on to OPEX with no minutes left. Okay. So just quickly, there's around $65 million, about $60 million over each year, which is around $183 million across the triennium, about $608 million across the LTP uninflated. And as with CapEx, there's a few options here. There's obviously the option to remain within the budget, and then there's the option to increase by 5.5, which is what Wellington Water have recommended. And taking the approach of looking at the prioritisation, the priority. So we've taken the same approach here, and there's a number of projects here which seem like the right thing to do based on the information that we've been provided. Did you want, Pete? Do you just want to quickly run over these projects, and then we can open for questions?
Yeah. So at the bottom, you've got drinking water reactive leak repairs. So to meet the incoming rate of repairs, calls, extra 1.1 million will allow us to keep it at the baseline number. So you've funded a significant extra amount this year. That's brought the backlog down. We think we can hold it with a little bit more money, or it will start to creep up again. Wastewater reactive, our current spend rate is higher than the funding that's being proposed. So we think it's just, we would expect to need this money, is probably our expectation. We talked a little bit last week about Harris Street siphon and stormwater plan maintenance. So this is effectively a lump sum to allow us to do some of this deferred maintenance and address some of the environmental issues that arise from contamination. This is drainage investigations. This is supports good public health outcomes from finding failures in the wastewater network or crossovers and trying to eliminate them, address them. And the plan maintenance is just, we've had to cut some of the plan maintenance by about 25% to meet the budget. So it's saying you could lift it back up, and that would allow us to meet a preferred plan maintenance regime.
Any questions on that?
Councillor Chung.
So when you take money out of the planned maintenance, then doesn't that sort of increase the danger of that being an even worse problem if you don't do the maintenance? Or is this maintenance that you can actually defer? Like, is it something that, is it an inspection, or is it actually doing something onto the pipes?
Well, I don't think we're talking about deferring it. We're talking about adding more money in to do more of it.
So, to meet the $60 million LTP budget, we did look at the plan maintenance program and say, what are the less important elements? So we had to reduce money. But yes, if you don't do plan maintenance, the consequences are likely to be more failures. That's the nature of it. But we're in that cycle where you've got to fund the reactive first. You do the firefighting, but to get on top of it, you've got to actually spend all the money on the firefighting and get back into spending on plan maintenance. So you're in that nasty phase where it's just costing a lot to get back on top of things.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is there more? There's no more questions, so is there more in the presentation?
One more slide.
Right, thanks, Chris.
Oh, it's a pretty simple slide. You've got a few options here. You can either increase the LT budget with no financial impact. Sorry, not increase the LT budget with no financial impact, or you can decide to fund this, or there could be somewhere in the middle. Given the types of activities that this funding is looking to achieve, I think it does make sense to fund this.
All right. Yep. Councillor Randall.
When you're talking about increasing the rates, water is funded from its own set of rates. So you're really talking about increasing the water rates such that it will be the equivalent of 1% on the general rates. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I believe it would be 1 cent on the general rate. I'm not sure what you mean by a water rate.
Yes, Ryan is behind you, Chris. You'll be relieved to hear.
So when we talk about an increase in rates, it's the average increase in all rates, so the total amount. So the 1% is equates to 5.5 million. So while it will be the water rate portion of it, it's the total rates in general.
So when you're talking about increase, you'll be increasing the water rates, but it'll be like adding 1% onto the total rates.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, but also the water rates are funded much more on a per household basis rather than on a capital value basis. So
yes,
that's a proportion of people's change will not be the same as general rates.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pannett.
apologies from being late from another meeting, and if someone may have asked this. Are you confident that if we give extra money to Wellington Water that they'll spend it well?
So, Councillor, we are doing this. The session is in two parts, and so we are coming to the end of the first. This was outlined at the beginning, so my apologies that you didn't hear it.
Sorry.
So we're going to move into PX, and we're going to get some advice from our team.
Great.
Thank you, Councillor Free.
I just wondered on what basis it was decided to fund the IT system through Greater Wellington and a bulk water fund, the bulk water levy. Why was that decision made, and who had the authority to make that decision?
I don't think the decision has been technically made yet.
Okay, but it's been referred to not just on this occasion, but at other times as well.
Yeah, maybe we can come this, maybe we can address this in the next session.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think that's all the questions, so we will turn off the live stream. Thank you very much to